Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June the 26th, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do consider ourselves a reputable podcast, which means we only take sources from places that have award-winning journalism and the actual accolades to prove it. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, News Media, Newsmax, The Blaze, whatever extreme left or extreme right news outlets out there. We don't follow them. We just do the facts, nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch your language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, guys, there may be things that might be shown that might be too graphic for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we usually start this? The only way we can start this, that, tomorrow for a lot of us, we're basically going to be watching the debate of, two very old gentlemen.
And just 2 days to go now until Donald Trump and Joe Biden face off on a debate stage for the first time in 4 years. The campaigns are already exchanging a few barbs pre-debate. Trump campaign sending out a fundraising email yesterday, making some more unsubstantiated claims about Joe Biden and demanding he be given a drug test before the debate. Trump claiming Biden's confused and, quote, has no idea what's going on. This morning, the Biden campaign released a new ad attacking Trump on his economic policies.
Donald Trump loves to attack Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Because he's focused on revenge, and he has no plan to help the middle class. He'd just give more tax cuts to the wealthy. Joe Biden is working every day to make your life more affordable.
Joining me now, senior White House correspondent Selena Wang. Selena, the latest 538 polling average shows Biden with a slight lead heading into the debate. How are both candidates preparing? Because it seems like, from what we've heard, it's two different ways.
Yeah, Phil, I mean, these two candidates could not be preparing for this in more different ways. For instance, you've got President Biden. He is still hunkering down in Camp David. He is really refining his message, honing in on his attack lines, and doing these full 90-minute mock debates. He's over there with his top advisors, and they're trying to figure out the best ways to hold Trump accountable. They say not just for what he's done, but what he said. We know they're going to be going hard at Trump. The president will be for the overturning of Roe versus Wade, for the abortion restrictions we're seeing across the country, and reminding voters that Trump said he's going to be a dictator on day one. Now, look, the Biden team tells me that they believe American voters just have not really been dialed into this race yet, but that this debate on Thursday is really going to be an inflection point for that, for voters to understand the stakes of this election. Then you've got Trump on the other hand. He's got none of these mock debates. We're finding in these messages. That is not the Trump approach. Instead, he's holding more than a dozen informal policy sessions with allies, friends, and potential VP contenders, Phil.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you're talking about the former president's messaging leading into this debate, I mean, as you heard in the introduction to this conversation, on one hand, he says you should drug test the president. He doesn't know where he is. On the other hand, he says, he's a formidable debater. He's changing expectations sort of daily.
Yeah, Phil, I mean, I think you really hit the nose on the head, which is that Trump has been all over the map on this issue. For months, he was really lowering expectations of a potential debate with President Biden. He was saying that he's cognitively impaired, made it seem like he couldn't even finish a sentence. But now he's really changed his tune, saying that President Biden is a, quote, worthy debater and that he shouldn't be underestimated. And then over the weekend, the former president suggesting that President Biden is going to be on drugs and, quote, jacked up to prepare for this debate. And all of that, Phil, I think just drives home how Donald Trump is hedging against the possibility if President Biden has a better than expected performance. You also see the former president mocking President Biden for studying this hard, for putting this much effort into preparation. Donald Trump really trying to drive the contrast that he doesn't need to prepare. He's out there rallying. He's already prepared. But I'm told from sources sources close to the Biden team that Donald Trump is preparing more than he's letting on, and they're expected to see a more disciplined version of Trump.
Yeah, this is going to be quite a moment in time in our political team, of course.
No, it's going to be a shit show. And I'm trying to be as nice as humanly possible when I say that. It's a shit show. Trump is not prepared because con men don't prepare. Con men show up, say some nice things, and then at the same time, they try to, gladly try to make you give money without making you feel bad about yourselves. I like what Trump is doing now at his rallies. He's making fun of Biden for studying because, every presidential candidate has had a study/debate sessions, multiple ones before every presidential debate. I mean, God forbid if someone should do a Google search and go back to the first time Trump debated Hillary and how that one went.
Of the United States. Mr. Trump, at the last debate, you said your talk about grabbing women was just that, talk, and that you'd never actually done it. And since then, as we all know, 9 women have come forward and said that you either groped them or kissed them without their consent. Why would so many different women from so many different circumstances over so many different years, why would they all in this last couple of weeks make up, you deny this, why would they all make up these stories? And since this is a question for both of you, Secretary Clinton, Mr. Trump says what your husband did and that you defended was even worse. Mr. Trump, you go first.
Well, first of all, those stories have been largely debunked. Those people, I don't know those people. I have a feeling how they came. I believe it was her campaign that did it. Just like if you look at what came out today on the clips, where I was wondering what happened with my rally in Chicago and other rallies where we had such violence. She's the one in Obama that caused the violence. They hired people, they paid them $1,500, and they're on tape saying, be violent, cause fights, do bad things. I would say the only way, because those stories are all totally false. I have to say that. And I didn't even apologize to my wife, who's sitting right here, because I didn't do anything. I didn't know any of these women. I didn't see these women. These women, the woman on the plane, the woman, I think they want either fame or her campaign did it. And I think it's her campaign, because when I saw what they did, which is a criminal act, by the way, where they're telling people to go out and start fistfights and start violence. And I'll tell you what, in particular in Chicago, people were hurt and people could have been killed in that riot. And that was now all on tape, started by her. I believe, Chris, that she got these people to step forward. If it wasn't, they get their 10 minutes of fame. But they were all it was all fiction. It was lies and it was fiction.
Well, Secretary Clinton.
At the last debate, we heard Donald talking about what he did to women. And after that, a number of women have come forward saying that's exactly what he did to them. Now, what was his response? Well, he held a number of big rallies where he said that he could not possibly have done those things to those women because they were not attractive enough for
I did not
them
say
to be
that.
assaulted.
I did not say that.
In fact, he went on to say...
Her 2 minutes, sir, her 2 minutes.
But did not say that.
It's her 2 minutes.
He went on to say, look at her. I don't think so. About another woman, he said, that wouldn't be my first choice. He attacked the woman reporter writing the story, called her disgusting, as he has called a number of women during this campaign. You know, Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. He goes after their dignity, their self-worth, and I don't think there is a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like.
So that's just a little snippet. That was 2016. You know, when Trump was on this whole thing of, I could be president, I could do this, I could do that. Remember that guy? That guy who, again, was in the middle of multiple allegations, which now, fast forward 2016 to 2024, he's now a convicted sexual assault predator. He's a convicted felon now. He is a convicted felon because of his mortgage fraud. He's convicted of his sexual assault case that was brought up. that has yet to be recalled, that has yet to get appeals done, by the way. That was 2016. And let's not forget the most recent presidential debate between him and Biden. And yet he does need to prepare.
There has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why wouldn't you answer that
because
question?
the question is, the question is,
Justice,
the
radical
question,
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended.
Not going to give a list.
We have ended.
Hey, NBC News.
So again, literally, for a guy who's going to call Biden old or say he's not focused or he's going to destroy him in the debates, I just showed 2 clips. One where Hillary Clinton back in 2016 literally called everything that was going to happen to Trump. And then the presidential debate with then Biden, where he just wanted to accost him. He had no answers. He had nothing. He was literally the con man that we know him to be now. He was the con man then. He's a con man now. To sit there and say that tomorrow's presidential debate will be entertaining because Trump doesn't have a plan. Will, didn't you see his economics plan? Yes, he wants to put a 10% tariff on all imports. He called himself a tariff man, not understanding what that meant. The fact that when he did put tariffs on all imports, it caused prices to increase across the board. Because I don't know if Trump realized this, a lot of America's consumerism comes from buying things from other countries. And you just raise the rates. So he has no plan on immigration. Oh, well, I should take that back. He does have a plan on immigration. And it's interesting that he sat there and says this. He wants to give all non-citizen college students who graduate from American universities green cards. Wait, what? Yeah. He literally said in his immigration proposal, he wants to give all non-citizen college students who graduate from American universities green cards. But says, wait, we're going to vet them. It's going to be an aggressive vetting process. It's amazing. His cult eats it up. But that's his immigration economic policies. Here's the thing that's the scary part about it. The scary part about it is just the fact of the matter, this man has no plan. He wants to do what he's basically trying to get out of his own cases, which one of them we're going to talk about very soon. He's trying to avoid jail. That's priority number 1. But he wants to be president back so bad. And you have a lot of disillusioned, lack of education individuals who just see Trump as this wet dream that they love. And they say, well, it was better when he was president. No, it wasn't. Because you know what happened when he was president? Russia laughed at us. China mocked us. At the same time, he pulled us out of the Paris Accords. He almost successfully got us out of. He almost pulled us out of NATO if he had the ability to do so. But at the same time, this is the man that's going to go in front of the American public tomorrow evening, and he is going to, for lack of better words, bullshit his entire proposal. He is going to basically attack Biden, call him old, call him fragile, say that he stutters, that he can't perform. He's going to do his greatest hits, because that's what con men do. Con men don't do anything outside of that. But the rules of the debate, and this is the thing I'm going to get at too. The rules of the debate don't make any sense. The rules of the debates are simple. Of course, coin flip determines who goes first. Now they're saying that mics will be muted when the person who does have the time to talk that will allow me to talk. The person who doesn't have that time, or the time has passed, will be muted. You should have been doing that from Jump Street. But here's the one thing about debates I wish they would do. That this journalist out of Colorado, Kyle Clark, what he did with the Colorado GOP primary should be exactly how every debate should go from now on.
Clear, Ms. Boebert, you blame Republican voters for the fact that you nearly lost a safe seat and not your own conduct. You didn't make any attempt to answer the actual question, which is who should be doing this? It would be an unprecedented government action. Who should go into Windsor or to Parker?
If the federal government,
when you say federal agents, do you mean just Border Patrol, just ICE, or are you talking about
National Guard, whatever it takes
that you wanted?
No, I
so
did get a full House vote, and it was.
I apologize. This is going to be a long evening if you speak over the facts. Okay.
Right.
Have any evidence to support that? Because law enforcement has not put that forward. I'm just curious where you're getting that causation about it. How would that work if the National Guard or the military were to come into Douglas County where you live and start rounding people up?
It's
Mr. Holtorf, you've been interrupting people constantly. I would ask you to stop. Ms. Flora, could you please answer the question?
Yes.
Bringing an out-of-state National Guardsman or the U.S. military in Douglas County, do you feel like that would work?
Not into Douglas County.
Move on. The question was about the actual work of rounding people up in Douglas County. We took a couple tries at that. Ms. Boebert, this session of Congress is on track to be one of the least productive in history in terms of the bills passed. Your Republican House colleague Andy Biggs said, "We have nothing to go out there and campaign on." Another House Republican, Chip Roy, said the Republican majority does not have one material, meaningful, significant accomplishment. That's what the Republicans are saying. What has the Republican majority in the House done about the price of groceries?
What we need to do to begin
and how does that impact food prices? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify.
When we are selling our resources.
Opportunity, if you would like to answer his question, which is the number of bills you've prime sponsored that have been signed by the president.
So my Pueblo Jobs Act has been signed into law.
A number, please.
That is one.
Got it. If parents were to take your advice seriously and pull all the kids out of public schools, what would America without a public education system look like? Okay, I was hopeful for an answer about what would happen if folks followed your advice and pulled all the kids out of public schools, but we'll leave that for another conversation. You resigned your position as House Minority Leader after your drunk driving arrest surfaced this year. And my question is not about what you did while drunk, which for anybody who missed it was speeding up I-25 at 90 miles per hour so fast a trooper thought that you were trying to race him. Then you reached for your gun during the traffic stop. You asked the trooper to call the State Patrol's lobbyist. Then you asked him to keep the arrest out of the media. My question to you is about what you did while sober. You did not disclose your drunk driving arrest to your Republican colleagues when they were considering you for leader and electing you. Yeah. What does that tell voters about your judgment? Mistake not to tell your colleagues when they were considering you for leader, knowing that you had something so big and embarrassing in your recent past? Yeah. It was about the softest reference that he could have made, but do you want to talk about the theater thing?
Sure. So, Kyle, my legislative record
we're not going to do that. You had plenty of time to answer the question. You chose not to. That's fine. I just want to make sure.
And
you have apologized for the theater incident.
I certainly have.
And I just want to make sure. Did you apologize for the behavior that went on with you and your date and the vaping,
Kyle,
or did you apologize for lying to voters about what you did that night and the disrespect that you showed to service workers that night? What specifically were you apologizing?
I don't believe there was disrespect. There were things that were absolutely taken out of context.
There's video of your interactions with service workers. I'm asking.
Right.
Are you apologizing for the lying to voters
that I flipped someone off and I did not. So I mean, I think it's been very mischaracterized. I'm apologizing for you, Kyle Clark, getting footage and releasing that. And people seeing this in a very private moment.
Certainly. It was very important to figure out whether you were telling the truth
you just had an
or whether a
interview
public agency was lying about your conduct.
You just had an interview with CityCast Denver, and you were saying how disgusting it is to record someone without their knowledge.
Let's talk about the use of earmarks in Congress.
You did that very same thing and released it
Members
to the world.
request funding for pet projects. That's what an earmark is. And some Republicans have rejected that process as like wasteful and corrupt and that kind of thing. Colorado's Republican Congressman, former Ken Buck, did not participate in earmarks. Retiring Republican Congressman Doug Lamborn did not use earmarks. Ms. Boebert, when you were elected to Congress, you said that earmarks were wasteful. You said they foster corruption. You said they're a way to buy votes. And then you decided to start using them too. Ms. Boebert, you've repeatedly taken credit for projects in Colorado that you asked for funding for, but then you voted against the bill in the end. Bridge over the Roaring Fork River in Glenwood Springs, water treatment plant in Gunnison, I-70 interchange in Grand Junction. You're able to vote no and get the praise for voting no because you know that there are enough other Republicans who are willing to vote for those bills so they'll pass. My question for you is this, and just a short answer, it truly is a yes or no question. if you were the deciding vote, would you still have voted no and killed all of those projects in Colorado that you now take credit for?
Yes, and I would have worked for a
Thank you very much
process. I
for
would
that
have worked
answer.
for a process.
You told a State House colleague who had lost his son in the Aurora Theater shooting that he needed to let go of his son's murder. You called a legislator of color buckwheat during a floor debate. You suggested that people with disabilities are like people who took the risk of running with the bulls in Pamplona. And you suggested that Miss Boebert dresses like a prostitute. Do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you talk to people like that? Swim, I ask a question, you
please
answer.
allow me to finish.
Let me just ask you. The question was, do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you speak to people that way?
Woo! That is how you should do a debate. That's how a debate should be moderated. Shout out to Kyle Clark. Shout out to Now This, because they covered it. But that's what I'm talking about with the debate. You know, because again, I am even with, and I say this, guys, very much so. People are really tired of debates that don't go anywhere. They're tired of the fact of, oh, it's going to start off civil, and then Trump's going to speak, Biden's going to speak, Trump's going to just try to cut in front of him, and this, that, of that nature. It's going to come down to one big ass shouting match. And for the lack of better words, people don't want to watch that. People at one point, citizens like you and me, wanted to watch a presidential debate so we got a clear idea of the candidate and how they handled issues. We're not going to get that with Trump. Biden, you'll get some questions answered, but Trump is going to do his usual stick. He's going to parade around. He's going to make fun of him. He's going to make it somehow about him. He's going to try to introduce his cases. He's going to try to sit there and say, it's still a witch hunt. They're trying to get me. They don't want me to be president. They don't want me back here and again because they know I'll make America great again. That's what he's going to say for 2 hours. That's what Trump is going to say. And at the same time, I so wish the moderator at that time would sit there like Kyle Clark and control the room. I truly believe that the moderator should have the ability to mute the mics. It shouldn't be up to the networks. It shouldn't be up to the production truck. It shouldn't be up to who's running the show. It needs to be up to the moderator. You want to control the debate? Control the mics. Set them on different sides so that way when they're speaking, the other mic can't catch it. Hold them to the fire on questions, just like he did. I mean, granted, he's going up the GOP, and going up the GOP after questions of truth is like shooting a fish in a barrel. And I'm going to be honest, it's fun. It's a little bit fun to watch that. But how he sat there and said, you're not going to answer the question, we're going to move on. I'm not going to, I love the fact that as a moderator, he sat there and said, I am not going to let you dance around the question. Either you answer it or you move on. Either way, the American public will see you as you are. I love that. Now, do I think the moderators for CNN tomorrow are going to do what Mr. Clark did? Probably not. Because let's be honest, they want ratings. Even though it's a presidential debate, even though people are going to tune in, like myself, we're going to see what they're going to cover in the first debate. We're going to see how the candidates handle it. But if you think for 1 second that Trump is going to sound anywhere intelligent outside of what he's already said in Time Magazine, the first 100 days he said when he was president, outside of what he would do the first 24 hours once he's sworn in, that he wants to make all of his problems go away. And then wants to pardon all those terrorists that did join in the January 6th insurrection. He wants to pardon everybody. So don't think for 1 second that it's not possible for him to become president. There's enough idiots out there that'll vote for him that if a lot of us don't vote, that's what's going to happen. But outside of this presidential debate tomorrow, yeah, expect it to be a shit show. But moving on from that for a second, because yes, both President Biden and Trump are headed to the border to speak about their immigration policies. And here's the thing that I want to say so badly, because about a week ago, I want to say about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, where I sat there and I showed the video of Steve Harvey and Madam Vice President Kamala Harris speaking at an event. And Steve, again, I like to call him Sambo Steve because Sambo Steve bothers me. What I mean by that is he bothers me because he sat there and said, you know, this is not where I'm going to ask Madam Vice President hard questions. I am going to give her easy questions because we have to keep her in the White House. You can't be demanding reparations if you're not playing the game. And let's be honest, Steve, we know you play the game. You tried to underhand Bernie Mac. That's a whole other story. But what bothered me is that he talks about we have to have skin in the game to get what we want. And I bring up the immigration problem because immigration is still a problem. It's not the fact that you have many immigrants that are crossing over from Texas and California, New Mexico along the southern border. It's not like America doesn't have space. We have plenty of it. The problem with the immigration system is it remains broken and it will never be fixed because as much as the Democrats try to introduce some sort of plan, the GOP will shoot it down. They always shoot it down. The GOP hasn't introduced an immigration plan since Reagan. That's just being honest. Think about that. Since Reagan, the GOP, the Republicans, have never introduced an immigration plan since Reagan. Whereas the Democrats, and again, I'm not trying to blow smoke up the Democrats' ass, they have submitted multiple immigration reform ideas to fix the broken system. DACA, Dreamers, they've tried. Now, has it ever gotten over the fence? No. The GOP has blocked ever since because they complain about the problem, but don't give a solution because the problem gets attention and the problem gets donors and the problem gets money for them to keep complaining about the problem because they drive the fear that America will look very differently in the next decade or so and it won't be white. Even though, as things are going on right now in the next decade or so, regardless of what they try to do, America, the face of America, will not be white. And yes, it is scary for those who are racist and bigots and zealous. That's what's scary for them. So it's amazing to me. Now you're probably asking yourself, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because out of what Sambo Steve talked about, where it says, I'm tired of, people always saying, what's the president done for us? What's the president done for black people? What are they going to do to get my vote? Well, let's play a little devil's advocate. Let's play a little devil's advocate, if you will. Why else would the president and why else would the next Republican presidential candidate head to the border? Because you have two large voting bodies there, potential voters, that basically will either A, vote for you, or B, vote for the other guy, or C, do nothing. A lot of white folks are watching to see what Trump and Biden do. A lot of Latino individuals who are registered voters are also watching to see what Biden or Trump do. And Latino votes can add up to quite a lot. And we've already seen that if Latinos are not, if those same individuals, those same ethnic groups are not voting for one, you can be damn sure they're voting for the other. And don't put it past you that Latinos will not vote for Trump. Don't believe me? Look at Florida. That alone tells you everything. But it's amazing to me that that is a hot button issue with that community. So I bring this up because, again, in this article here, where black men who are wanting to be potential voters are all asking the same question, because now black men, along with black women, along with the black community, it's basically becoming it's becoming an important key voting block for Democrats. I say Democrats because I don't see the GOP outside of Trump going to a church in Detroit that was mostly full with white people and trying to speak to black people and try to say, oh, well, I was the only person that's done a lot more for black people ever since Lincoln. I've gotten HBCUs and colleges federal grant money. They never have to come back begging. All of it was bullshit. But the thing I'm getting at is you have potential black voters that are now asking the question that what will the president do for us? And I get what Roland Martin and them are trying to say. I get that we know we shouldn't. But again, let's play devil's advocate, because obviously immigration reform is going to lead whether or not votes sway one direction or another. Why is it so hard to believe that a president or presidential candidate can't speak to a certain aimed group of voters and say, you guys have been ignored? You guys, every system that is put in place has been designed to work against you. It was never for you. It was designed to work against you. Why is it so hard for that to be said? And even more so, what will you do? That's pretty much what Black people are asking. And it's a fair question. What will you do? Because what killed me was Kamala Harris Madam Vice President Kamala Harris tried to sit there and say that she came up with a conglomerate with other tech companies to help with housing. And Madam Vice President, I mean this with all the respect in the world, but I have to pull a Kyle Clark here. What actual accomplishments that have you done that have actually helped Black people, your constituents? I had to put it out there. What accomplishments have you done? Sure, you've made history as being the first Black female, being the first Black vice president. You made history. You helped bring in Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first Black woman to be a Supreme Court justice. You've made history. You've made history on getting things passed out of a watered-down Build America plan that was actually more progressive than it was moderate, but you were still a swing vote because it needed all Democrats because no Republican would vote for it. Outside of that, what other accomplishments do you have? Because this is what your Black voters will be asking. And I think it's a fair question. Because we can't sit there and say, oh, we'll do this for the greater good. Because if you want to be honest with you, if I want to be honest, Black people have been voting for the greater good since, honestly, the last Bush. Since when it came down between Clinton and the original Bush, not Bush 2.0. He came much later. But when it came down to Clinton and Bush and everybody was scared, what'd they do? Go to Clinton. Let's go to Clinton. That made more sense. He played on Arsenio. He played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall. He seems cool. He smoked weed. He inhaled. Why not? Black people have been voting for the greater good ever since the right to vote was given. But we cannot overlook the fact that as you have two presidential candidates going to the border to do more than just secure it, you're trying to secure votes. You're basically needing to do the same for every constituent, because as we vote for you, yes, we're going to know what you want to do for us. And we should not feel ashamed as Black folks to sit there and say, yes, we want to know what you're going to do for us. Because here's the crazy part. Now, and I bring this up before I move on to the next subject, because remember the Fearless Fund? You know, the fund that only issued grants to only Black women entrepreneurs, and that a white man said that, hey, this is discrimination. How dare this group of Black women who have funds give their funds to only other Black women who want to be business owners? And yet now the court blocks them from issuing grants, and that's still going on. Again, the Fearless Fund, right? Just a couple of days ago, the Small Business Administration offers $30 million in grant funding to women business centers. This includes a variety of projects, including funding to open a center in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Explain to me what the big-ass difference is. That's what I want to know. Because, again, if I'm a Black voter, I can ask this question. How come a small conglomerate of wealthy Black women who only want to uplift and empower other Black women to become entrepreneurs get shut down because of their exclusivity, but yet the Small Business Administration can offer a $30 million grant to women business centers and nobody bats an eye? Make it make sense. Because if again, if I ever get the chance to interview the president or Madam Vice President, I'm sorry, I am not going to be Steve. I am going to ask the hard questions because they have to answer them. Because like I've said on this podcast, guys, the Democrats could have sat there and instead of waiting for an election year, could have done everything that they're doing now. Trying to get prescription drug costs lowered, trying to get life-saving medication lowered to under $5 or $10, to actually get college, to actually help us out on the student loan plan, which I'll get to momentarily. You waited until election year to push all these things through. Okay, but you didn't sit there and say the entire time of this term in Congress what the Democrats have done. And this is why I hate to say it. The Democrats are spineless. How else do you have that many accolades of what you've done despite GOP interference and blockage, and you're not out there saying, this is what we've done this entire congressional term? Ask your GOP what they've done outside of finally getting Hunter Biden convicted of drug and gun charges. Woohoo. I mean, you're bound to get 1 out of 5 right, because they tried Benghazi. They tried Obama. They tried Biden. But they had to get somebody because, again, this is what the GOP has done. Wasted taxpayer money getting paid for doing nothing. And it's amazing to me how not one freaking Democrat has not called it out. How have you not called it out? That's my question. Because, again, I would pay a lot more attention to you. And I'm pretty sure more constituents would pay more attention if the Democrats just sat there and said, hey, this is what we've done. This is what they haven't done. Introduce facts. That's all you have to do. Introduce facts. If you introduce facts, nobody questions it except Trump, because, he hates facts. But moving on, guys, like I said, I talked about Biden's student loan plan. There was a SAVE plan that the courts are halting again. Now, I know what you're thinking. 2 federal courts in Kansas and Missouri are the ones halting the plan because they're saying the same thing that was said before. The president does not have the ability to forgive student loans. And I find this amazing that the GOP is heading this up. And again, just like I talked about 10 seconds ago, the Democrats are not hitting home with this. The Democrats are not saying, we're not the one holding you up of alleviating your student loan debt. It is the GOP, because the GOP has been lobbied by those who are the purse holders for these loans and saying that, hey, if these people don't pay, we don't collect. And if we don't collect, then we don't get our profits, and our shareholders are pretty mad at us. And it is amazing to me that the SAVE policy, which again, this is Biden's attempt number 2 at trying to alleviate student loan debt, that the simple fact of the matter, guys, is that the president, I love that it said the president doesn't have the ability to forgive student loans. Should I bring up the PPP program that was pretty much garbage that went down during Trump's presidential run? The $787 billion plan that was supposed to help during the pandemic, that was a terrible thing that almost everybody could get a PPP loan. It was so crappy that 96% of that program's loans were forgiven. 96%. And who do you think paid for those loans? Certainly not the people that took them out. The American taxpayer did. We had to eat 96% of that cost. But here's the thing again, Democrats won't say it, that it was okay to allow a business that took a loan out, a business that had means and ways of getting other financial capital other than taking a government loan. It's okay to forgive them, but you're telling me that forgiving nearly over 20 million Americans that have student loan debt, it's a little harder to forgive them? Well, I was able to pay off my debt. Where's my check? Or you shouldn't take out a loan if you didn't need it. Cut the bullshit. We all was on that college train at one point, center point. But again, we're not discussing the predatory lending that certain banks and private banks do. We're not talking about the interest that accrues. That's pretty much the scam of the whole thing, to where you never get out. I mean, if you do get out from underpaying that interest, then you're still stuck with the principal. But for a lot of people, they never do cover the interest enough. And some people, unfortunately, pass on before that debt can be alleviated. And let's be honest, if they did alleviate that debt or didn't allow to report on credit reports, you would have a lot more consumers than you would have debitors. But again, the GOP has been bought and paid for, and what they said, we don't want this to pass. So again, Biden and the Democrats could do a whole lot more if they just say what we've been saying. Stand up, stand on your accomplishments, and rightfully hold those accountable who were basically being gatekeepers. It's not that effing hard. That is all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, I wanted to cover this because the Surgeon General decided that, well, I am going to pretty much declare gun violence a public health crisis in America. I know what you're thinking. No shit, Sherlock.
Today, our nation's top doctor issued a stern warning on gun violence all across the U.S., declaring it a public health crisis for the first time ever. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy raising concerns that Americans are experiencing firearm-related deaths at dramatically higher rates, and they're now the leading cause of death. Think about this, the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country. Dr. Murthy providing several staggering statistics to make his case. Chief among them, the rate of gun violence in the U.S. is anywhere from 5 to 121 times higher when compared to any other high-income country in the world. The Surgeon General says the impact of this violence is also causing untold damage to our mental health. Joining me now to discuss United States Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. Dr. Murthy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this today. I know a lot of people for a long time have been wanting this to happen. Your advisory outlines how the impact of gun violence goes beyond deaths and injury. It actually leads to cascading harm and collective trauma across societies, threatening the mental and physical health of everyone, but especially young people. What concerns you the most here?
Well, I'll tell you the reason I'm putting forward this advisory from our Office on Gun Violence for the first time in our history is I want people to understand that this is a public health concern of great urgency and that the impact it's having on our country is far wider than I think most people may realize. The greatest price we're paying for gun violence are unquestionably the lives we lose, nearly 50,000 a year. But we've now reached a place where gun violence has become the leading cause of death among children and teens. That was not true a decade ago or 2 decades ago. It is true today. And we're also seeing that for every one person we lose to gun violence, there are 2 who are injured. There are more who witness these incidents, family members who lose a loved one, communities that are traumatized by the violence in their neighborhoods, and millions of people, including our children, who read about and hear about these episodes of violence in the news, and they worry. And that's why 6 in 10 adults in America are now saying that they're worried about losing a loved one to gun violence. It's why half of kids are saying that they're worried about a shooting taking place in their school. This is what I hear all across America when I meet with kids and with parents. And if we understand the full extent of this toll, if we understand that this is now a kids issue, then my hope is that we can respond with greater urgency and address this as a public health challenge that it is.
Yeah, a lot of the data you present focuses on how gun violence is increasingly impacting kids. Is that sort of a recent phenomenon with school shootings? I mean, why is that primarily the focus of a lot of the research you provide, but also, as you just said, a lot of the concern for not only kids, but for their parents?
Yeah, well, certainly mass shootings have had an impact on the psyche of our country. Really, the fear of gun violence has really infiltrated the psyche of America. And when you look at kids in particular, the fact that half of them are worried about a shooting in their school just speaks to that. But it's important to realize that the vast majority of gun violence-related deaths that take place are actually taking place in other settings, usually in neighborhoods and in homes. There are people every day, including our children, who are engaged in playing sometimes with weapons at home that are left unlocked and loaded. and they end up injuring themselves and sometimes, killing themselves or others accidentally. We also know that there are acts of violence that are taking place in neighborhoods as part of conflicts where a lethal weapon is available, and that can lead to homicide as well. But it may also surprise people to know that around 56% of gun violence-related deaths are suicides. And this is why when we look at the breadth of factors that are driving gun violence, you quickly realize that there's not one simple solution to it. There are multiple steps we have to take. And I lay out a series of strategies that we can take as a country to ultimately address this. And that's really important for people to know. There is a solution here. We do not have to consign ourselves to a future where gun violence is the day-to-day reality that we face, where we are worried about going to school or work or the grocery store or a concert. We can live in a safer way. And that's what I'm hoping that we can, approach with a new set of urgency, because ultimately this is a kid's issue and nothing is more important than the well-being of our children.
Sir, So I'm going to stop it right there just because it goes on into that. But okay, the U.S. Surgeon General has said that gun violence is now a public health crisis. Where does it go from there? Because it's the same. How can I be so very nice about this? I feel like it's the merry-go-round that literally everybody gets on and will get off once it reaches its rotation. What I mean by that is, and I hate to put in these terms, we have a tragedy. There's a school shooting. There's national media attention. There's psychiatrists. There's gun people involved, and then you hear those three letters: the NRA, Fox News. These other people say, well, look at these. Well, gun safe zones were never the problem. Well, gun safe zones were a problem because criminals don't follow the law. Look at Chicago, strictest gun laws in the country. Their crime rate is horrendous. Taking away our guns is not going to solve the gun problem in America. You know what's going to solve the gun problem in America? Training our children. Our kids used to go to school with rifles in the back of their trucks. That's how they sound. Whereas, again, a long time ago, that a bill was put through Congress that was going to allow the CDC to study mental health and, as they call it, mental health and firearms in America. That they were going to be given funding to study the effects. And the GOP, backed by a very powerful NRA at that time, shut it down. And now, fast forward decades later, we're still having the same problem. And don't get me wrong, I'm a gun owner. I'm a firearms owner. I understand. In this day and age, I understand. And I point this out because I have to point this out. You always have the right to protect your home and your family. You always have that right. But a lot of people sit there and say, well, the Second Amendment says that these rights shall not be infringed. Some people really got to start reading the Second Amendment in its entirety because, yes, it was put in place because at the time, the forefathers were a little bit worried that they did not want to become the things they left overseas for. So they allowed the citizens to basically defend themselves. That's what the Second Amendment was for. It's not the fact that a tyrannical government may rise up again and people feel like they got to play Facebook cowboy COD commandos, which, by the way, you would be completely outclassed at this point because we don't have militias. And if you do, they're probably not the kind you want to be associated with and may not like people of color. Just saying. At the same time, the whole thing of, well, they're going to try to take away my guns. Guys, it's 2024. Nobody's taking away your guns. Nobody. It can't. The undertaking that it would take for someone to take your guns would be more than trying to start the next World War. And besides, the U.S. government has access to more better shit than the shit that you buy at Bass Pro Shops. Just saying. But let's get back to it, though. How do we fix this? We need to admit that America has a mental health issue, that we do need to study it, that we do need to look at gun laws, that we need to look at how guns are transferred, how they're sold, how they're tracked. I hate to break it to you for those gun nuts out there that hate this word, There needs to be a registry. Well, I don't want the government knowing how much ammo I have. I do. If you got a stockpile of ammo and you're not exactly stable, I want them to know about you. Because the one day that you're the person who sits there and says, I don't want the government to know how much ammo I'm stacking, is the same guy that'll be at the next school shooting. At the same time, they're not criminals. It's amazing they say criminals don't obey laws. The last couple of mass shootings that have happened were not your everyday hard felons. They were individuals with issues, but weren't denied firearms. That alone should tell you everything. So yes, is there a public health crisis? Yes, there absolutely is. At the same time, will anything be done about it? I hate to say it, as long as the GOP is going to take their stance on this, it is going to be another talking point until the next tragedy. And that's hard to really swallow. It really is, because things do need to be done, even though those things may upset a little bit of the gun population out there. But again, your rights aren't infringed, but we need to be better about it. That's all I'm saying. But moving on along, guys, I wanted to cover this story as well, because in Louisiana, it seems that they want to put the 10 Commandments back in classrooms. Yeah, some parents got some issues with that.
Lawsuit over that Louisiana law that requires the 10 Commandments be displayed in all public school classrooms in the state, saying the display is unconstitutional. The plaintiffs, they include parents who are rabbis, pastors, reverends, Jewish, Christian, Unitarian, Universalist, and non-religious as well. Basically, they're saying the display of the Christian 10 Commandments pressures students to adopt, quote, the state's favored religious scripture. Take a listen to this.
But it sends a dangerous and harmful message to children and the community that anyone who doesn't believe in the state's preferred scripture does not belong.
Marissa Parra following this for us and joining us now. Walk us through kind of some of the main arguments that they're making here, Marissa.
Hey, Yasmin, good to be on with you. This is something we've been following since last week when that was officially signed by Governor Landry. And so what we heard tonight was what we've been expecting. We had heard last week that they would be filing this lawsuit. And so now we got a little bit more of a sense of what their arguments were. We went through the complaints and of course we heard it. And you're going to hear from one of the plaintiffs in just a moment. But in part, they argue in this complaint and in that media call we heard not long ago that this violates long-standing precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States, and that it also interferes with parents' right to direct their children's religious education and upbringing. And you're going to hear from one of those families in just a moment. But one thing that I thought was interesting, Yasmin, is that one of the lawyers that is a part of this case saying that this lawsuit was filed not just on behalf of the parents, but also the children. Take a listen.
Personally, I believe in a Christian version of the 10 Commandments. But the text of the 10 Commandments mandated by House Bill 71, even though Christocentric, presents language that runs counter to important Presbyterian values, such as inclusion and equality.
Now, something I also thought was interesting in terms of the timing. So the law is effective already. This was signed last week. And so in terms of when the law is required to be upheld, that is, these classrooms in Louisiana required to display the 10 Commandments, right, that is effective come 2025, Yasmin. So the hope here, now that they've filed this, they're hoping they're going to have a hearing, they're seeking an injunction, and their hope is that they can get this overturned, if you will, in some way, shape, or form to stop this effectively before that deadline of 2025, Yasmin.
So two things here. If you're looking at 2025, then are we looking at January of 2025? So when kids return to the classroom in 2 months or so, this still will not be in effect. And with that all being said, are we likely headed towards the Supreme Court with this thing?
Great questions and important ones. So you could absolutely see classrooms before 2025 implementing this, but it is not required until the start of 2025. So the idea being you can have classrooms without it at the start of winter break in December, but by the time they return, if everything remains as it is exactly right now, Yasmin, they would be required. All of those public classrooms would be required to display the 10 Commandments on some sort of large poster-sized display. And then regarding the Supreme Court of the United States, it's another important thing here. We talked about that precedent that was set roughly 40 years ago, Stone versus Graham in Kentucky. And so what we could see this rise to the level of Supreme Court. And the idea here is that this is a violation of the precedent that was set. And so there is some thought that maybe this in general was, signed with the hope of it rising to the Supreme Court. And this is a conservative Supreme Court. So there is some question as to how that would go if it rises to the level. And of course, we will stay on top of it every step of the way, Yasmin.
So yeah, long story short, parents are suing because, well, what is the whole point of having the separation of church and state if you're just going to insert church back in the state? Yes, the Ten Commandments can be seen as offensive to those that might not be of the Christian nature, although it is public school. Theology has no place in public school. And yet, Louisiana feels like we need to bring Christ back into the classroom. I hate to bring this all back to voting, but do you see why I keep saying voting is important? Because those religious nuts got elected. Those on the crazy side got elected. And those that are put in place are the same ones that'll turn around and institute policies just like this. Because let's be honest, if you want to stop kids from critically thinking, if you want to stop kids from actually becoming progressive, productive adults, you attack education, specifically public education. Because you notice they're not ever going to attack private education because they would rather give public funds to private education. But that's a whole other story. Getting back to Ten Commandments, though, I'm glad the parents are suing because, again, they should. Me, I'm on the other side. Now, you're probably saying, oh, so you're for religious? No, I am not. I am the first person to sit there and say it. I don't like religious schools because, number one, theology can be taught at churches for free. Why am I allowing my child to go to a place where they should be getting a better chance of education, but yet somehow they put religion into it? To me, that's a sign of indoctrination. I don't like it. I can't stand it. I personally hate it. However, if they choose to start putting religious scriptures in public schools, here's how you call them hypocrites, because they say it's about religious freedom, right? They say it's about putting Jesus, they say it's about, not having their religion suppressed. They say that all the time, right? Here's how you can call them and say they're full of shit. There is a spokesperson for the Hindu community that actually wants to have Sanskrit scriptures displayed in the public classrooms right alongside the Ten Commandments. Again, this is the Hindu community, and they sit there and said, we love this idea. And even more so, we would cover the cost of these posters to put in the classroom right next to the Ten Commandments, if they would allow us. That it would be of no cost to the Louisiana public education system, and that they would love to do it. So think about this for a second. You've opened the door, and I think, and don't get me wrong, a lawsuit is effective, sure. But think about this. The fact that if you try to introduce religion into these schools and that other religions go, oh, so the Ten Commandments is good. What about the Church of Satan? What about the Church of Satanists? What about the Quran? What about Buddhism? What about, and it keeps going down the line, and you can't sit there and tell them no, because the same basis bullshit that you use to get the Ten Commandments in, you can't deny the others. But if you do deny the others, then what are you really saying? So I'm all for this because I love the fact that although it literally and figuratively invites discord, but it's the discord that needs to be set, because they say religious freedom. It's religious systematic oppression that they want to push through because they truly believe that Christ is telling them to put him back in schools. I can't wait for the Church of Satan. I can't wait for the Church of Satanists. That's my personal favorite when they come to the forefront. But we'll cover that story as it comes along. I also wanted to play this from last week because about a couple of weeks ago, the Negro League, we did find out from Major League Baseball, the Negro League's statistics will be introduced into the Major League Baseball statistics and merging together. And, for everybody to know who Josh Gibson is, or Reggie Jackson is, or a lot of others, woo, it's going to make a lot of baseball purists mad because, you know, all their heroes are white. But anyway, Reggie Jackson said something so profound that was basically on Fox Baseball. I have to play it because, again, this is what I talk about when I say history needs to be told, and nothing's better about history being told by those who experience it.
Baton has been passed for over a century here. We've been talking earlier about if it wasn't for the Willie Mays, the Jackie Robinson, the Reggie Jacksons, the three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord? I said, you know, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie, I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really,
we love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson right there.
That's a great history lesson. Reggie Jackson telling us all about it, preaching. Wow, that's unbelievable. The great.
Yeah, you say preaching. 2 of y'all were uncomfortable. Poppy was looking off in the distance. I think Jeter was the only. I mean, I'm gonna say Jeter. Alex Rodriguez was probably the only guy that's looking at him and like, say it all. And again, you can't argue that. I mean, these are guys that, along with him, Jackie Robinson, you can go down the list. And what Reggie Jackson said it was, he said, I wouldn't wish this on anybody as far as what they're doing. And that alone screams volumes right there that you have to talk about the history, not just in baseball, but in U.S. America has a fracked up history, really. And the fact they try to cover it up, they try to make it seem blue sky, like America, America never had a slip up. America's had plenty of slip ups and falls and crashes and horrible things that were done. And thank goodness for shows like Lovecraft Country. Thank goodness for artists out there who are simply using their craft to sprinkle in a little bit of history. Because like I tell people about Lovecraft Country, it's like a lot of people did not know that Tulsa Massacre was real, about Lanier Lake, about sundown towns, about other towns that were raided, not just Tulsa. And again, it's amazing. Like, again, if you follow my podcast, I talked about the last resident, the last living descendants of the Tulsa Massacre. You know, the massacre that we all know, where a mob of white people decided to burn down a prominent black town. The last surviving residents were just denied by the Supreme Court for a case of reparations. Literally, the clearest case of reparations out there, and the Supreme Court denied it. So yes, it's a little hard. And again, and not to make this back to the election, it's going to make it a little difficult for Biden and company when you do speak to black voters. Because right now you're trying to make sure Latino votes covered. But at the same time, you do need the black vote. At the same time, we want to hear more than just hearsay. At the same time, we do want to see you guys being held accountable while holding the other side accountable. Because that's what's going to bring people back. If that, along with how debates are done, are going to bring people back to the table. But address the fact that so many problems are going on. Education, immigration, inflation, wages are still down. Cost of everything is going up. You have to acknowledge that and be honest about what you're going to do. But at the same time, say your accolades, but definitely call out the obstacles. It's that freaking simple. But the last thing I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment is a oopsie, because the Supreme Court may have actually ruled on something, but they didn't want nobody to know about it yet.
Rocking the U.S. Supreme Court. A closely watched decision on abortion set to come down any day now, mistakenly and briefly posted to the court's website this morning, indicating the High Court is likely on the verge of allowing emergency abortions in Idaho. The document obtained by Bloomberg Law before it was quickly removed from the website. The court's spokeswoman explaining the court's publications unit inadvertently and briefly uploaded a document to the court's website, adding that the court's official opinion will be issued in due course. NBC News has not verified whether the document is the final version of the opinion or a draft, but the media's rare advanced access in this case, harkening back to an unprecedented leak in another abortion case just 2 years ago in Dobbs, when Politico published the draft decision overturning Roe v. Wade. The current battle over Idaho's law, which criminalizes nearly all abortions except to save a mother's life. The Biden administration sued the state, arguing that abortion ban directly conflicts with a federal law requiring hospitals that receive federal funding provide abortions to women facing health emergencies, even if not on the brink of death. That conflict, doctors say, puts them in a dangerous bind.
It's a really heavy burden to carry, to have the 5 years of potential incarceration to take care of your patients.
The document posted today and later published by Bloomberg in full includes an unsigned opinion from the court punting on the ultimate dispute for now, sending it back to the lower court, which means women in Idaho will be able to obtain emergency abortions while the lawsuit continues to play out. But it also highlights deep divisions on the high court, the justices trading barbs in the document. Justice Jackson saying today's decision is not a victory for pregnant patients in Idaho. While this court dawdles and the country waits, pregnant people experiencing emergency medical conditions remain in a precarious position. While Justice Alito calls the court's decision baffling, saying the court has simply lost the will to decide the easy but emotional and highly politicized question that the case presents.
A remarkable development, Laura. Any sense of when the court might release the official opinion in the Idaho case?
Lester, we could see it as soon as tomorrow. The fact that the court is saying it already made its way to the publication unit means that it's nearing completion. So we could see it tomorrow at 10 a.m. or Friday.
So let's think about this for a second. This is coming from the same Supreme Court. This came from the same Supreme Court that shot down Roe versus Wade, which basically, because of that and the fact that many red states introduced trigger and abortion laws that went into effect as soon as the law was struck down, prevented a lot of women from getting the care that they need. Because again, God forbid a woman have control over her own body without judgment. So it's interesting now that they're deciding this case about emergency abortions in Idaho that, yes, the ruling did appear on the website, was taken down. So unless they decide to do a 180 and say, we change our minds, I don't see it changing anytime soon. But it does go back to what we said, because usually on how the Frack We Got Here, we are pro-choice, which means that a woman can do whatever the frack she wants to do with her body, and it is her business and her business alone. If she decides she doesn't want to be a mother, then she has that right. If she decides to carry, she has that right. The thing about it is those options should be available to her without question. Because a lot of people sit there and say, well, these unborn babies, and yet you ignore the children that are in the foster care system. You ignore these religious adoption companies who turn away same-sex couples because it doesn't fit their description. You turn away the fact that school lunches are now a problem because a lot of these school systems are basically turning off free lunch for these kids, but you're not complaining about them either. But you want to basically, carry a torch for a baby that is basically right now DNA goo. Miss me with the bullshit. So with that being said, yeah, I mean, it is cool if they decide to go with it. But again, abortion should be legal and it should be allowed for women. Because again, it is amazing to me that we are in a country in this day and age of 2024 that a woman has to be careful about her body because a group of old white men decided that she would rather serve as a broodmare more than as a productive citizen of society. Because trust me, there are a lot of horror stories out there of 10 to 11 to 12 to 13-year-old girls who are raped that have to carry the baby to term because some people don't want to do the right thing and actually take charge of the situation and basically not traumatize the girl. Just saying. Or women that just don't want to be mothers. I still say it, and the cold hard truth about this is a woman choosing not to be a mother and doing what she needs to do to get that taken care of is the most responsible thing. That's irresponsible. But I digress, as we will simply follow out and see what happens from there. I think we may have dropped out for a second because I guess I must be getting too real. Because when you get too real, they start cutting you off. It lets you know Big Bird's always watching. But anyway, we're gonna get to our feel good segment, guys. Because usually how the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you use your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. We will leave you guys out some good vibrations, especially with the Olympics, Paris 2024. And I always want to cover this story because I think this young woman literally got a bad rap, because all she did was smoke a little weed that prevented her from being in the Olympics from being in the Olympics last time. But now she's definitely on her way.
This morning, more Olympic dreams are coming true. At the U.S. Olympic track and field trials in Oregon overnight, sprinting sensation Sha'Carri Richardson flew to victory in the women's 100-meter.
Sha'Carri Richardson, 10:70,
setting the world's fastest time this year and racing her way to Paris.
I cannot wait to go to Paris and represent.
The win marks a second chance for the 24-year-old Dallas native who was Tokyo-bound in 2021 before testing positive for THC, chemical found in cannabis. Richardson then missed the Tokyo Games.
Every chapter I've been through in my life designed to prepare me for this moment.
Take your mark. And in the pool Saturday night, Katie Ledecky swam to another trials win in the women's 800-meter freestyle.
Ledecky is going to defend her Olympic gold in Paris.
As Caleb Dressel claimed his latest victory in the men's 100-meter butterfly.
Dressel looking good again for the second straight night.
It's tough making it through the trials. This is more nerve-wracking than the Olympics.
Meanwhile, in the women's 200-meter individual medley, Alex Walsh's second-place finish was good enough to punch her ticket to Paris. The Tokyo silver medalist now joins her sister, Gretchen Walsh, on Team USA.
I didn't know if I was going to make Paris after she made it. I'm just happy that we could go together and live this dream that we've been dreaming for so long.
Still to come tonight on the track, the men's 100-meter semifinal and final rounds, with 3 one-time world champions all in the running. Noah Lyles, the defending 100-meter world champion, easily qualifying for the men's semifinals overnight.
I'm glad to be happy. I'm glad to be out here. I'm glad to be racing and feeling like myself.
And back to the water for a moment. USA Swimming says so far 44 pool and open water athletes have been made.
So let me stop it right there because he's just talking about what's actually happening. Long story short, a beautiful story. I am rooting for Sha'Carri Richardson, number one, because again, I can go into the whole thing in the back that it's just marijuana. Marijuana is not performance enhancing in any way, shape, or form. But I digress. We're going to be happy for her because she will be at the Paris Olympics. And in the words of Issa Rae, I'm rooting for everybody that's USA in black. Simple as that. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate any time it is shared. I've been told or said, you have a great show. Look, I'm happy to do it. And again, it's the mission to inform and encourage. That's the whole idea of this podcast. So definitely thank you all for watching. Again, if you want to catch me, guys, on the interwebs, Black_Spartan615 is where you can find me pretty much everywhere. You can like and follow me, even chat, even talk to me. Just don't make it weird. That's all I ask. I am a pretty good conversationalist. I like to talk to people, like to meet people, but just don't make it weird. Don't make it weird. Don't make it to the point where I have to block you. Just be cool. That's all I'm asking. But yes, definitely check me out, Black_Spartan615. Like, share, and follow. I cannot stress this enough, guys, because my friend at Navy at BlurryCon Speaks says it all the time. A like, a share, and follow costs nothing, but it means the world if you do it. Also, at the same time, guys, the banner at the bottom, I'll make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit Podcast. Definitely check them out. Again, like, share, follow, make them big. I'm trying to make them grow. I really do believe in the mission behind these podcasts. So hopefully, guys, you'll do the same. Also, check out blurstation.com. I have been talking about this along with some of my other colleagues. This is our Hulu. This is our Amazon, except the fact that content never disappears. It is $10.99. It is $10.99 a month. Again, guys, you can get movies, television shows, anime, manga, art. It has it all. And it's where we can be ourselves for nerds and blurs and people of color. So if you do decide to join, guys, please hit the join now button. Once you hit the join now button, if you'll go to the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership, and from there, if you'll select me, Black Spartan, I would certainly appreciate it. As you can see, guys, $10.99 a month allows you access to Blur Station. You can't beat that with a stick. After 36 months of paying $10.99 a month, guys, you do have the ability to own a piece of Blur Station. And it's very unheard of without doing very little that you get to own a piece of a news media conglomerate. Also, if you are a POC content creator and you want to see about your stuff getting shown on Blur Station, you do have to join first. From there, you can speak to people behind the curtains, and hopefully your content will be displayed there. You get to own that content 100%. You just have to, they just want a piece of distribution. And again, guys, that is not bad at all. And aside from me, guys, of course, you can find this podcast where a podcast can be heard or seen. You can definitely check us out on Always Record TV, whether it's online or through Google or the Roku app. Definitely check us out there because, again, you get to see my handsome mug and all of my episodes there for How the Frack We Got Here. And again, anywhere a podcast can be seen or heard is definitely where you can find us. That being said, guys, again, as you're going to see tomorrow, the presidential debates are going to happen. We are getting ever so closer to voting who will be the next president. I cannot stress this enough. Not just the presidential debates, but the others in your local city and state. If they're having elections, guys, get to know the candidates. Press them for the issues. Because, again, for a lot of people in my home state of Tennessee are finding out, we need to be very mindful of who we send to represent us in the state legislature. Because right now, outside of a handful of people doing great work, there are a whole bunch of idiots like Sexton who are basically making it harder for constituents in Tennessee to actually have a decent living. So again, get to know your candidates, press them on the issues. And if you yourself feel like you would make a good public servant, whether you want to serve locally or statewide, definitely check out plenty of sites. And I'm going to actually start doing that. I'm actually going to start bringing up sites to where if you are interested, you can check out this site, as it can help you as far as how you can sign up, how you can run for office, and go from there. Because again, the whole mission of this, guys, is to really be informed. Not only be informed, but to act. We can no longer sit there and hope somebody else gets it right. It needs interaction. Otherwise, history will repeat itself. That being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black woman as a national cybersecurity director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's when we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go about our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, especially in this heat, and we'll all get through this. Hydrate and stay safe, guys. Peace.